Well, maybe the next guest will cheer us up a little bit, or at least provide some degree of rational explanation and some degree of hope for our future. Because over the holiday period, term 2 holidays, there was a conference, an international boys' school conference held at Westlake Boys High School. It was hosted by that school. I think the roll must be touching. I must ask him. But the roll must be almost touching a couple of thousand now. It's a huge school, Westlake Boys High. It always has been big. But nevertheless, and in the wake of, or at least in the lead up to that International Boys Schools Conference that was held at Westlake, there was a survey released. A new study found that boys at single-sex schools tend to leave school with higher qualifications than their counterparts at co-ed schools, and that these findings, according to media reports of the Times, contradict the traditionally held belief that boys do better in co-ed schools while girls fare better in single-sex settings. As somebody who attended both, I don't know. That would be interesting to discuss, but somebody who will certainly know all about it is the host of that conference and the principal of Westlake Boys High School, David Ferguson, and he joins us this afternoon. David, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Michael. How are you?
I'm well. Sorry to bump you down the schedule today, but I'm sure you understand.
I understand.
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, what's your role? What is the role of Westlake Boys High now?
2,600. Yeah.
Wow, you're huge.
A lot of boys.
How do you arrange a school when you've got 2,600 boys at it? Do you have a
deliberately, strategically? We're at capacity. I mean, we turn away a lot as well. We don't take it for granted. We're in demand at the moment, and we try and take as many boys as we can. But yes, it's very well organised, and it has to be.
2,600 also would. So have you got a zoning scheme in place? Have you?
Yeah, we do. We have a zone, and we take quite a few out of zoners as well. Our zone it's not massive, so we're able to take a number of out of zoners also.
If you let the zone go, or the Ministry of Education did, what would your school role be?
Well, we could grow to well over 3,000 if we but we haven't got. Yeah, we just don't have capacity. When the school was built in the 60s, and probably anticipated having just over 1,000, and the footprint's still the same. So we've probably reached our peak, I think.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that in terms of buildings, but it's always interesting. I sometimes think that zonings are designed to protect bad schools, and they certainly don't reward good. Obviously, parents want to send their children to your school, otherwise you wouldn't have that phenomenal role. Well done on that.
Thank you.
Now, Westlake Boys High hosts the International Boys Schools Conference. Tell me a little bit about the conference to start with. Who comes to a conference like that?
Sure. So, I think there's about 250 to 300 member schools of the International Boys Schools Coalition across the world. And every year it's held, obviously, in a different part of the world. And this was about the 31st annual conference. So we had 630 delegates here from 15 different countries and about 160 different schools. So it was... For a lot of them, they've never been to New Zealand before, and it was great to have them here, and it was really enjoyable. We had 4 days of the main part of the conference, and then 2 days for about 80 researchers who were doing research work for the coalition. So very enjoyable, lots of great feedback on New Zealand and Auckland, and fortunately Westlake as well. So
David, we've got a shocking line for you. I'm going to take you back to my producer. Can you go and sort that out for me, Josh? Get him onto a better line, because the quality is just too bad. All right. So I'll get you to sort that out, and we'll come back with David. This survey showed, can I say, that almost half of boys at single-sex schools left with UE, compared to 30% of boys at co-ed schools. And only 6.3% of single-sex schools boys left schools with no qualification, compared to 14% of boys at co-ed schools. So that will give you some indication of some of the stats that are there. When you've sorted out that line, Josh, I'll talk to David, and because I really do need to talk to him about this. It's quite important. 2,600 though, and it is not just being noticed. All right, we'll try David again. David, hopefully we've got a better line.
Yeah, we'll try that. Yeah.
That is better. Good on you. Thanks. Why do you think boys achieve better in single-sex schools than in co-ed schools?
Yeah, good question. I mean, firstly, I think we've been able to prove it, which is pretty pleasing. We've got 12 years of data now, and there's no exceptions. Every decile level, every achievement level, irrespective of the ethnicity measure, there aren't any exceptions. So it's pretty categorical. I mean, I'm not. I can't talk on behalf of all the boys' schools in New Zealand, but personally, I just think it's the research that we did 5 years ago. We commissioned an Australian company, did a work, and they surveyed thousands of students, staff, old boys, parents, and they reported that it kept coming back to culture, climate, and ethos, having a culture of high challenge and support, encouraging aspiration, the brotherhood in our schools. They reported that what they found was that all of those things collectively helped hold the boys to an educational purpose and kept them in the groove. And because of the belonging in the boys' schools, it motivated them to work hard. And also, I think having staff who spend all day, every day, specialising in working, in our case, with teenage boys, is something that is a point of difference. It is different to co-ed schools.
Well, the thing that immediately strikes me, my father was a rector at Waitaki Boys, and also principal then of Scots College in Wellington. So I have that sort of background, and so I've seen it through his point of view. But the thing that strikes me is, as you say, there's quite a bit of structure in a boys' school. It's almost old-fashioned to say it, but there's a series of expectations, and there's actions meet consequences, and there's things like you're going to take pride in your uniform. You've just talked about ethos and about the brotherhood, a camaraderie that starts to exist in a school. Is that another reason why single-sex schools might provide a more beneficial learning environment, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that needs to be the exclusive domain of single-sex schools or boys' schools. I mean, there's some great co-ed schools in New Zealand as well. But I think boys don't need to edit themselves. They can just be themselves, and it works. The data shows it works.
See, one of the things also I've opined about a lot is the sexual discrimination against boys in particular in primary schools, when you've got 90% of your workforce, plus 90% of your workforce being female. Do male teachers or female teachers who've got boys teach boys better?
Well, a great teacher is a great teacher. I mean, we're about 50-50 male-female. If I look at the pictures on the walls from the 70s and 80s, it was a tiny proportion of female staff teaching in the school. And I think our school's better for that. I think regardless of whether it's a man teaching or a woman teaching, if they're a great teacher and they get boys and they care about them and have a good relationship with them, and the boys respect them, then they're going to get great outcomes with them, I think. We know globally the profession has become a female-dominated profession, teaching. Richard Reeves in the US, whose book of Boys and Men went pretty big last year, wrote pretty extensively about that. That's the makeup of the teaching profession globally at the moment. But so I suspect, without knowing, I suspect that boys' schools would have a higher percentage of male teachers compared to co-ed schools. But I don't have the data on that.
No, listen, I'm sure. Well, I can only go on by personal experience. I've got a boy at St Kevin's College in Oamaru at the moment. I've got girls that have just passed through a co-educational school called Mount Aspiring College here. the proportion of males at St Kevin's as teachers is much greater than the proportion of males at the co-educational school, at Decile 10 co-ed school in Wanaka. And I'm sure you'd find that throughout New Zealand. Do boys' schools attract male school teachers?
Well, potentially, yeah. I mean, it's potentially some of those teachers have gone to boys' schools themselves, so that we've got a number of former Westlake students teaching here, so there's some familiarity there with them. Some of them have dads of our students who are here as well, but I don't have those numbers to hand now.
All right. You talked about culture, climate, ethos. There's another group of schools that are doing very well academically in New Zealand. They are faith-based schools. The Catholic schools in particular are turning out kind of grades that single-sex schools boys are doing as well. They presumably also have a culture, climate and ethos as well. Is that what's missing from the mainstream New Zealand education system, do you think?
Well, faith-based schools aren't an area of expertise of mine, and it's not part of our school. But I think any school having a strong culture and an ethos that has high expectations of the young people who are there are well on the way to getting some good outcomes, I think. I mean, if the students enjoy going to school, if they love their school, if they're proud of their school, and if the school wants them to, if the school expects them to work hard, then those things are a great start, I think. The research that we did, I referred to a few years ago, and they described it as the secret sauce of boys' schools, and those were those three words: the culture, climate, ethos, and then brotherhood as well. That's what they said collectively made up the secret sauce.
Okay, and parents. You see, I would suggest to you that probably you can probably tell as a secondary school principal, when you've got those first kids coming through into the Year 9 class, that their parents or the background that they come from, socioeconomic, but also whether or not those parents value and like education itself and schooling, will have a critical influence upon their kids' academic or otherwise success. Is that true or not?
We've got a huge range of parents. We've got families here from all over the world, and whilst we're what would have been described as a high decile school, we've certainly got parents and families from all sorts of different backgrounds, socioeconomically as well. I mean, for me, it starts with, if we can, when the boys are here, buy into what we say is important, and if they enjoy school, feel like they belong, if they've got something else that they do while they're at school, like a activity, sport, music or whatever, which connects them further, and they go home and say they like school, well, that's a great start from a parent's point of view. If their son wants to get up and come here every day, that's a great start. Our parents are awesome. They're really supportive of the work that we do. We're very clear. We've got an open evening in 2 weeks' time when I'm talking to the next cohort coming into Year 9, and we try to spell it out pretty clearly when they come in, that this is what we stand for, and this is what we expect, and this is what we hope you're going to be able to do in terms of supporting us for the next 5 years. And I'm grateful for the parent community that we've got. We get, on the whole, great feedback, and with 2,600 boys, though, there are going to be times when things don't always go smoothly, but normally when we sit down with parents and come up with a plan, we can put things back on track again.
And finally, the composition of Westlake Boys High School. Now, I live in central Otago, so I'm just going to make a stab here that you've got quite a few Asian folk at your school, and probably a good proportion of European New Zealanders as well. Not as many Maori and Pacific Islanders. You're a Decile 9 school, I think. Is that roughly right?
Well, we're 10% Maori. I mean, we've got a Maori immersion program in the school as well. It's a really important part of our school. Our Pacific community isn't quite as big, but we've got a lot of Pacific students. New Zealand European students would be the highest, followed by Asian students. But I think last time we checked, we had more than 80 nationalities in the school. So very diverse, and I think representative of Auckland as a whole. As I said, there's families here from all over the world, as well as families who've lived in the zone for generations now, and whose dads came to the school, and even grandfathers came to the school as well. So, from my point of view, it just adds to it all. It prepares the boys for the world that they're going into, and having people from all different parts of the world is just a healthy mix, I think.
Yeah, well, I'm also looking at your NCA results for 2019, 2020, 2021. You're certainly well above the decile 9 rate, and that's male and female as well, and well above it, and congratulations on that.
Thank you.
But I also see, and I'm fascinated when you talk about culture, that your Asian students are zipping it. I mean, they are just banging it in terms of qualifications, NCA level 3 and above, compared to every other ethnicity, including at your school. Is that culture?
Well, when we refer to culture, it's the culture of the school.
I understand that, but is that another culture?
Our top performing student last year, who was our Dux, was a New Zealand European student who's heading off to Harvard in a couple of weeks' time. So it's not like our Asian students are the only ones that are doing well. But many of our Asian families are first generation into New Zealand, and they are very motivated for their sons to do well, and that's not the exclusive domain of Asian families.
No, but why are Asian students doing better at your school and in other secondary schools in New Zealand than any other ethnicity?
I don't think that's an area of that I can speak with great authority on. I just see boys who, of all different ethnicities here, doing well, and irrespective of where they come from. And yes, our Asian students do well. Many of them are connected to the school in other ways as well. They're performing brilliantly outside the classroom in a range of different fields, and I think that further motivates them to do as well as they possibly can at school. So lots of reasons, I think.
And finally, your boys' rugby team last year, I think, got into the top 4 for the first.
Correct.
For the first time. It actually beat, or the North Shore team beat the top Auckland team to be the representative in the top 4. How's it going this year?
Good. We're unbeaten. We don't want to get carried away, but we've got a decent team again. We're top of the league with 3. We've won every game so far, and all being well, we'll make that Blues final against the top school in Auckland, and we'll see what happens.
We will be following it, yes, because last year, I think Hamilton boys, Napier boys played the final last year, but they're always strong. And Hamilton boys, another huge school, but I think it's got a roll of about 2,300 as well.
That's right, yeah. Susan Hassel, who's the headmaster of Hamilton boys, she spoke at the conference about her life's work there. She was absolutely extraordinary. She was terrific. She's a wonderful school leader who leads a terrific boys' school in Hamilton, and they do very well in more areas than just rugby as well. It's a great school, and it's one that's held in very high regard in New Zealand. Yeah. Well,
parents are voting with their sons' feet and sending them to these schools. Hamilton boys, Napier boys, another school that's its population has gone up. Virtually all the boys' schools traditionally in New Zealand. There was a time in which you were very unsexy, uncool, and you had the feeling that the Ministry of Education didn't like you. Has that time passed?
Well, I think choice is a really healthy thing in education. I think telling someone they have to go to a certain kind of school isn't helpful, because all children are different, and I think it's important for young people and their families to have a range of options available, and boys' schools are one example of a point of difference in education, where families can choose that as an option for their son in our case. And in our area, there's a range of different options available: co-ed, faith-based schools, there's some independent schools, and there's single-sex schools as well. And I think the more we can have choice, the more likely that we've got schools that best fit the needs of different young people.
I agree, totally agree. And thank you very much for joining us, David. I appreciate your time, and the best of luck with the rest of the year. That is David Ferguson, the principal of Westlake Boys High School. That's a huge school, 2,600, could grow to 3,000. But the point he makes right at the end about choice It's a choice denied to many New Zealand parents and students. And it is, a choice is critical if you are going to have a good school. Because if kids leave a bad school, if their parents take them out of those schools and send them elsewhere, it sends a message. But that message is completely frustrated and sabotaged if you have strict zoning requirements. It's even worse in some areas of this country where you only have one school servicing a particular community, particularly in provincial and rural New Zealand. And then, oh dear Lord,